These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
A beautiful email just came across within the last hour to the Flagrant Howls inbox here, Kyle, and I'd love to present this to you in trivia form.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So as people may know, last night the Timberwolves beat your Portland Trailblazers on a back-to-back, your hometown team. And Anthony Edwards did not get to the court in time for the start of the game. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker had to start in place of Anthony Edwards. I'm not sure. Did we find out why, by the way? Johnny K did ask, did you have to take a number 2? And so he did ask the tough question.
That's why I subscribed to The Athletic.
Yep. And Ant did deny that it was a Paul Pierce situation. Did we ever find out why?
No.
Some stretching that went a little too long?
Being around the team for those 2 Portland games last month, Ant does kind of cut it close every now and then with like some late, pregame stuff in the locker room or behind the scenes. So I think it was pretty innocent. After the game, they asked Finch, like, what happened? And Finch's like, I don't even have to ask him, kind of being a tough dad again. I don't think it's anything specific. I don't know how deep we're going to go into any of that today, but I should just add this note now that excuses are no excuses. I'm not here to give them to you. I'm just telling you what I've heard. His girlfriend had a child a week ago, and there's no paternity leave in the league. Again, they make millions of dollars, but I think a 22-year-old kid just had a baby and has played 5 games in 7 nights, and I think he's just maybe not fully all the way focused on basketball, and I kind of get it.
So sportsbetting.ag took the opportunity to send out this email. They put their brain trust to work this morning and came up with a fun list of odds for who will be the next NBA player to not start a game because he was late. The next player to not start a game because they, quote, lost track of time. And I have a list of 15 players that are 38-1 or better. Who would you guess is number 1? Now that Anthony Edwards is off the board, the next most likely player to space out and miss the tip-off.
Jordan Poole.
He's not among the 15, but I feel like he should be.
Feels like he might not remember.
It might happen tonight, actually, for him. Yeah.
Now I'm curious. That was like I would have bet money on that. So who's number 1?
Okay, of the 15, there's 2 Timberwolves on this list and a former Timberwolf.
Oh, well, I mean, so
number 1 is a current Timberwolf.
Karl-Anthony Towns?
He's number 1, 5-1.
And who was this sent by again?
Sportsbetting.ag.
Yeah, I wish that I know of them. That'd be great if that website prioritized a little more about withdrawing your cash and not getting completely ripped over. Instead of, personal. Just coming up with things of like, how else can we dunk on someone who also a week and a half ago lost a friend to another untimely death. But keep going, sports betting AG. You're the best.
Rudy Gobert, 14-1.
No chance. Like, if we're going to get into any game stuff later in this pod, Rudy Gobert was the only one other than maybe Mike Conley who showed up last night, knew it was his job to play basketball, and actually did it. So Rudy Gobert is going to be early, if anything, not late.
So Cat is 5-1. DeAndre Ayton, 6-1.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. That's the ice storm thing that he didn't make it to the game.
That's true. Yeah, that actually did happen, but it wasn't spacing out. He just didn't know how to get to the arena. And then D'Angelo Russell is 7-1.
Maybe because I could see that. Speaking of ice,
James Harden 8-1. Lost track of time at the strip club.
Yeah,
stuck in traffic before the game. And then Zion Williamson lost track of time doing stem cell in the trainer's room or something. So there's your list of players that could lose track of time.
I need to know. I would like to do a pod this summer that's just you reading some of those emails, like the weird emails that get sent to you. I remember when I was running Canis, I would get these weird betting odds of I don't know. But shout out Sports Betting AG.
Mine's just filled now with updated Kirk Cousins odds, just like the Falcons have moved in front. Oh, here come the Commanders. The Vikings are making another run.
No, we'll just move on. But rumor has it, I think you probably the way that has all transpired in the last 24 to 72 hours last week. This isn't a Vikings pod, but I always get one Vikings take. I bet your inbox has a couple apologies too. People saying, you know what, maybe you were right about that. We
read 2 of them on the show today, and okay. Yes, I am in terms of the idea that Kirk would sign somewhere else and maybe isn't fully loyal to the Vikings, but more loyal to his bank account. Yes, the apology inbox is wide open. So, well, you and I haven't spoken since our Thursday with Jim Pete last week, and man, the sky was falling there because the Wolves, for the third time all season, lost back-to-back games, including that back-and-forth matchup with the Clippers. I don't know. I told Judd yesterday, and then they win last night. I told Judd yesterday, that Clippers game, maybe I'm just being a homer, but I'm more encouraged by the fact that the Clippers, speaking of odds, most sports books have the Clippers higher than the Timberwolves on the championship odds list. Mm-hmm. And they've held that team, I think it's 19 points below their average in the 3 games they've played. They've literally held the Clippers, who average 117 points a game, to 98 points or 99 points per game defensively. So they got to score more than 96 or 97 to beat them. But I kind of came away thinking, you know what? That's what a playoff series is going to look like against that team. They've got a bunch of Hall of Famers, and you're probably not going to sweep them in 4. It's a 6 or a 7 game series. There's going to be some games where it's a grind to get to 100 points, and I wasn't really offended by that loss. The previous loss before that, Anthony Edwards didn't play in the second half against Sacramento. So the fact that we're all wringing our hands when the Timberwolves, Kyle, the Timberwolves lose back-to-back games, and they haven't lost 3 straight all year
since
they
April
put it
2nd of 2023.
Right. So I'm still feeling like, hey, the Western Conference is loaded, especially with some of these teams picking up steam. The Nuggets are figuring it out, but I don't really have as bad of a taste in my mouth over these last few games as some other people that think the sky is falling.
One of those people is a man that I have mentioned maybe once or twice on this podcast, Jeff Theige, my dad. So
the text from Kyle's dad segment that we're going to
we're going to do a new segment called Text from Kyle's Dad. I did clear it with him. He said I could read it. But so we spoke last Thursday, and I have another thing I want to get into about Jaden and Jim and all that stuff. Then the Wolves Friday night lose in overtime. Really bad again, and this is a trend. This is a theme. We can talk about it too, but bad late game stuff. They played really good defense, got some stops, run a play in regulation that I'm pretty sure Chris Finch did not design the play for Karl to run to the ball and take a contested 3 with a tie game. But part of that still is on Finch. It was just a bad play all around. The guys weren't in the right spots. No Ant second half for the birth of his first child. Sunday Clippers, old 1990s rock fight, right? Like good old 89, 88. Like, it just brings me back to the glory days of, yes, that. So I missed both games.
And the Bulls.
I missed both games this weekend live because I have been on the house hunt and doing all this adulting and stuff. But Sunday, phone's on D&D. Wolves lose to the Clippers by 1. Again, late game stuff kind of dooms them in. And my parents finally got over to Kauai. I think I was telling you this. They go there kind of to snowbird. My mom had some health stuff going on. So I'm happy they're there. It's early for them. But my dad just sends me new podcast, Frustrated Rooster, which is a reference to the wild chickens that run around Kauai. Wolves are in coasting mode, and teams know it. No longer a top 4 team in the West. Don't feed the Wolves. They need to get hungry. Facts. Monk comes off the bench and scores 39. No Westbrook and bench player scores 24. Wolves shoot 38% from the floor at home. My dad's not using any periods, by the way. Just all one run-on sentence. If Wolves' goal is to just make playoffs, maybe not home court advantage, if they don't at least get past first round, team roster will not be the same next year. I would not expect Laurie A-Rod.
He's already trading players.
Yep, I would not expect Laurie A-Rod to spend the money. Players are going to make that decision for them. Fans and players can't piss and moan then. No reason unless truly injured to miss a game or leave early. Could have waited another 1.5 hours. Not going to touch that. Wolves need to get hungry or there will be no food on the table for you. Signing off from Kauai, frustrated and thirsty Timberwolves fan. So that was a lot.
So he's out.
He might be out on the Wolves.
Is he saying that they might actually slip into the play-in if they don't? Because they're only 8 games clear of the 7 seed right now, and there's
and again a little context. My dad turns 71 in a couple weeks. I'm going to go see him in Hawaii in a couple weeks to kind of celebrate. But he is the biggest fan of you and of this podcast. And he does kind of revert back to scar tissue, achy knees, Timberwolves arthritis, where he's determined that the Wolves are going to now fall out of the top 4 in the West, which we're getting close to that being mathematically impossible.
Well, they can't fall out of the 4, right? They're 6.5 up on the Pelicans.
Yep. And none of those teams
I guess mathematically they could, if they lost like 10 games in a row or something.
Right. I mean, there's still enough easy games. Last night, again, was like one of the worst basketball games of all time. The Wolves did the bare minimum, but they did, win. So
would it help to maybe for your dad, Jeff, would it help for us and maybe even for some of the listeners that still experience this Timberwolves PTSD where the minute they lose back-to-back games, it's like, oh God, here you're getting flashbacks like Troy Hudson as the starting point guard, and would it help if we sort of diagrammed worst case scenarios here just to see like how bad? Okay, how bad is it? How bad could it be? I would say my worst case scenario, it doesn't even involve them falling out of the top 4 in the regular season. I actually think because they would have a tiebreaker over the Clippers too. I guess they're 2-1. Aren't they 2-1 against the Clippers?
Yep.
And they play them one more time next week. But I think it's pretty far-fetched that they would even drop to the 4 spot. So I think they're pretty solidly in the top 3 seeds. My worst case scenario would be the Golden State Warriors, who are red hot over the last month or so. Mm-hmm. They did get smoked by Boston over the weekend, but they've been largely red hot. Mm-hmm. Is if you face the Warriors in the first round, and I've been sitting here for 3 months saying, bring that old sack of players into this arena and watch a gentleman's sweep unfold in 5 games. If you get in as the 1 seed or the 2 seed and you play the Warriors and they beat you in like 5 or 6 games, and Karl has a couple of those weird playoff games where he gets into foul trouble and spastically charging into defenders and stuff, and now you're talking about a big move in the offseason. Like I think if it helps to confront some of these scenarios just for therapeutic purposes, I'm all for it. But that's kind of my worst nightmare.
Yeah, the Warriors won, right? Because you've been pretty open, as have I and many others, of like bring it on, right? Like they just don't have.
Be careful what you ask for.
They don't have size. Obviously, they have the championship experience and all that stuff, and are kind of starting to click at the right time. But again, that Boston game is kind of an outlier to an extent. But Boston also was up 50 at half, and I do wonder in a longer series if you can drag it out. Do the Warriors have the stamina, the depth, and the size? But they have Steph Curry, right? So the one issue I would have going into a playoff series would be like, you don't have the best guy. It's like any football playoff matchup. It's like, who has the best quarterback? I'm probably going to bet on them.
But you do have a number of guys you can run at the best guy.
For sure.
Right?
For sure. I think your biggest fear, if we're going to try to walk my dad off the ledge here, is that the Draymond aspect of like, you don't want to see Draymond punking you at your own place. I watched Lakers Thunder last night, and I would say my biggest fear would be like some sort of 1-8, 2-7 matchup where you're playing a Lakers team that has, I don't know, half a dozen former Timberwolves players like D'Angelo Russell and stuff. You get LeBron James, just, iconic playoff whistle. And that team actually has size and a lot of playmakers. And when they get hot, they're really cooking. So losing a playoff series when you're the better team and have home court advantage to the Lakers, which I think are such a lesser team and franchise of the last 5 years, and like the Warriors, would probably hurt me more. Like Draymond can dance on target center all he wants. I'd be mad. But D'Lo doing it would probably break me.
Oh.
So, especially, so.
And if Conley kind of pulled a Chris Paul where he looks great in the regular season and maybe even looks great in the first couple games, and then age just smacks him upside the head and he just becomes unplayable in the last 3 games of the series, and D'Lo's the one averaging 29 points.
I think, to a lesser extent than just going down this road of like, again, Dad, if you're listening, I don't think there's really any way they follow the top 4, because the teams that are 5th, teams that are 6th and 7th, like the Kings last night, they're currently 7th, so they're in the play-in situation. They dropped like a 22-point lead to the Bulls at home. So after the Kings looked really cool on Friday without Fox against Minnesota, they get Fox back last night, blow a lead at home. Spoiler alert to those that are siloed. Other teams do it too. Other teams have bad late game stuff. Like if the Wolves were to lose to the Suns in the first round, I don't know. I think if the Wolves lose in the first, if the Wolves lose in the first round in general, there's going to be changes. So I don't disagree with my dad there. But if they get like swept or something, then there'll be bigger changes. But you could make an argument to lose to the Pelicans and maybe run it back again. Maybe to the Suns, but I think if you lose like a 1-8 or something to a just team that, you're 12 wins better than at the end of the season, that would be a pretty tough pill as well, especially if it's one of those two teams that has crazy fan bases like the Lakers or Warriors.
So, okay, we just kind of went through our worst nightmares, which involve the aging Lakers and aging Warriors. Let's go through sort of the tiers of what happens next.
Okay.
So we've got if worst case scenario happens and they lose a 1-8 or a 2-7 against one of those fossil teams, I think Cat gets traded. I think they'd be looking for a reason to make a personnel move that also could get them under the second apron luxury tax.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that happening. What's the next level of accomplishment then? I'm with you. If they lose any first round series, even if they fall to like the 3 or the 4 seed and they lose a 3-6 or a 4-5, I think it would be deemed enough of a late season collapse. Oh man, they were the 1 seed the entire season, and then they fell at the end of the regular season, and then they couldn't get past the first round. Changes. Yep. I could see that. I don't think Finch gets fired, but I could see changes. If they win the first round series against the Mavericks, let's say, or anybody, but they beat the Kings in the first round of the playoffs or something, and then they get smoked by the Clippers in 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. Then what? Is it a successful season at that point? And then what happens? What's the follow?
I am only answering for myself. People, again, the West is wide open, but not as wide open as many claim it to be, because I also just have been watching a lot of Nuggets games, and I know that we historically and hilariously called them a fake 1 seed and they won the title, but they are. It's cool to watch a team.
The Purdue of the NBA, I believe.
Yeah, whoops. It's cool to watch a team actually turn the switch on, and they turned a switch on. They've, reporters of that team have been like, they had a meeting during All-Star and like have really ratcheted it up. That's cool. So Denver is the best team in the West. I don't care where they finish in the standings. Yeah. But to me, it's kind of like trying to predict out the weather. Especially, I know it's been a nice warm winter in Minnesota, but like any week now, there could just be a March blizzard that you get through letters C through F, right, of naming blizzards. I think it's just all about context. If they lose in the first round, whether it be 4, 5, 6, or 7 games, I think they make changes. Because of the financial ramifications of things and the ownership stuff, which was murky last week and maybe a little less murky this week after we found out that they do have all of March maybe to kind of iron this out or whatever. The easier one to the fans might be to fire the coach. But I think the better one from the organizational standpoint would be to trade a guy who makes a lot of money to try to balance the books. So that's why I'm with you that it'd be probably Karl before Finch. But if they win a first-round playoff series, I'm good. That's loser mentality. I have mirrors, self-aware, I can see it. If they win a playoff series and build something and then were to get, lose in the second round, I'm okay with that. Because then it's like, we figured out we can do this, and now we need to tweak to do that. Even if they were to get swept in the second round. That's just me. People won't agree. But that's just kind of where I'm at. And anything after a first-round playoff series, to me, would be kind of gravy. Because, again, what if your second-round matchup is the Nuggets? I just think the Nuggets are a better team right now than the Wolves.
I'm trying to figure out where this podcast should be at on the mission of the show statement. Purple Daily is very clear.
Yeah,
Purple
we're
Daily
get 50 wins, so.
Well, we tried the 50 wins thing last year, and it became very obvious early on that they weren't going to hit that number. It
wasn't going to be nifty.
They've got 43 now, so they're only 7 away. They're going to hit 50 wins this year. But Purple Daily for 4 years now, I think it was starting in May or June of 2020, the pandemic year, and we started every show at the time by saying, if you think we're hard on this team, because that team at the time, the Vikings, the season before they went to the playoffs, I think they won 10 or 11 games. They beat the Saints in the first round of the playoffs, and then they got smoked by the 49ers. But, hey, they're building something. It was year 2 of Kirk Cousins. And Judd and I would come on the podcast and just kind of, God, they got smoked by the Niners. This just doesn't feel like it's it. Kirk just feels like he shrinks in these big games. And, well, you guys are being really negative. Why are you being so negative? They just won a playoff game. They won the division, right? And we literally had a huddle off microphone and said, why? Let's do some self-reflecting. Why does part of the audience think that we're being too negative? Well, it's because we are talking about the team through the prism of wanting them to win a Super Bowl. And if it feels like with the quarterback that they have or with the head coach or the defense or whatever that they're not on the right track, then our criticism is going to be a little bit louder because they're wayward from their path of trying to win the franchise's first Super Bowl. But that's a franchise, the Vikings, that has done everything there is to do across 60 years of being in the NFL, except win a Super Bowl, right? They've been to 4 Super Bowls, lost them all. They've been to a bunch of NFC championship games. They've got Hall of Fame players up and down the board going back to the 1960s and 70s, all the way up to Randy Moss and Chris Carter and these guys. There's no other boxes left to check except win a Super Bowl. So I feel very comfortable on Purple Daily saying, sorry, I don't care if Kirk throws for 4,000 yards. Dude has one playoff win in 9 years. He's 36 coming off an Achilles. You got to change the quarterback. You got to get, who's your Josh Allen? Who's your Patrick Mahomes, right? With this team, all of the boxes are unchecked. Like they've literally had one season in 35 where they've made a meaningful run and or have won a playoff series. So I have a hard time. I know a lot of people who watch Purple Daily, listen to Purple Daily and Flagrant Howls say, why don't you hold the Timberwolves to the same standard that you hold the Vikings to? I say, because they're different franchises. At some point, yes, championships. It's been 1991 is the last time a men's team won a championship around here. And so we should be pushing for championships. But it's like, man, our son is on a bicycle with training wheels and didn't fall down the hill for the first time. And we're sitting here like mad that they're not a professional motorcycle racer yet. I think the next step, to your point, is winning a playoff series. And then we can kind of evaluate and see where things are at and how they feel, right? I'm not ready to put championship or bust on this team. Maybe I'm being too lenient. Maybe I'm being too much of a homer.
The Vikings are a 16-year-old child, and the Timberwolves are a 7-year-old child.
Sure.
Why would you not have this? Like, why don't you hold your 7-year-old to the same expectations as your 16-year-old?
You dumbass 7-year-old. You know, you can't figure
Wait,
out.
I can
this
say
calculus?
that on this? Oh wow. Okay. No. And again, I want to preface this that I think we've been pretty critical. I mean, I think once a week I call the franchise historically a dumpster fire, which is a can filled with trash that is on fire. So I don't think I've been the most polite to them moving backwards, but yeah. And by the way, if they lose a playoff series like in round one, I don't care if it's 4, 5, 6, 7, or 11 games. If they lose in the first round, I will say that this season was like a disaster or like was a failure, because the Rudy Gobert thing, even if he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and they're going to all those boxes you talked about, those are postseason boxes. I think they've checked a lot of the regular season boxes and cleared up a lot of like those weird stats you'd see during a broadcast. Where like, well, the Wolves haven't beaten the Kings since, the Reagan administration. It's like, okay, they've done all that stuff now, but they haven't done anything postseason wise. It's been 20 years. They've only made one trip out of the first round, that kind of magical season. So they have to win a playoff series, and anything after that, context aside, is kind of gravy, but they have to win a playoff series. And right now, especially over the weekend in games that I wasn't as concerned as others, especially when you lose by 1 or you lose by 4, they haven't lost by double digits since January 3rd. They're going to win that playoff series by being more mature than they were in their last 2 playoff series, and that would, to me, be a sign of sincere growth that you can build upon. But if you do the same, Karl-Anthony Towns mistakes, bad Ant shots, dumb Rudy turnovers, bad Jaden defense that you saw against the Grizzlies and the Nuggets the last 2 years, and you do it again for year 3, then you're going to have to really start to look at, why are we spending all this money on a team that might be capped? Literally.
What do you think? What does your gut tell you right now with a month left in the regular season? It's March 5th, 2024. There's a crazy scenario where there's a gun pointed at your head and you have to make the right prediction on how the season's going to finish. What is the most likely outcome from where you see it right now?
I know that the homestand, the 7-game homestand after the break, that they got to spend like 2 weeks at home was great. And I think it's really cool that this team is like randomly is trying to regenerate the population by themselves and having all these baby showers. But you talk to people, and when I talked to Finch in Portland, he was like, I love going on the road. I love it. I think it's easier for the guys to focus because every day you wake up, it's all about a routine to play a basketball game. Mm-hmm. It's not baby showers and all the other stuff that goes on, which are really important in personal lives. Again, whether you like it or not, man, the only difference between Ant and you is that he makes a lot more money and can jump higher. He's just a normal dude who's 22 and had a kid. So I think when you get him on the road, you're going to see some improved play these next week and a half. Finch mentioned post-game last night about the team had the day off today, and then tomorrow they'll head to Indiana for their game on Thursday. But they're going to have another, as he said, spirited film session. Those have seemed to resonate with the team when they've had them in the past. So I expect them to kind of pick it up again and finish 1, 2, or 3 in the West. Not super concerned. And to me, bring on the Kings, bring on the Mavericks. I even think bring on the Suns. I want those teams in a playoff matchup because I think the Wolves just match up really well with their size and their ability to guard the perimeter against all three of those teams, especially the Suns. Like, they're so ISO heavy that just throw your best defenders on them and let them cook. But I think they'll finish with a top 3 seed. There's 20 games left. And I think they'll win a first-round series because despite the bad weekend that they just had, they have more talent. And I do think when they get out of this kind of hangover they're in, that might be tied to just too many games, a lot of back-to-backs, personal stuff, that they're going to lock in and figure it out.
Okay, I'm gonna take it a step further. I think they beat the Kings or the Mavericks in the first round. I fear the Suns a lot more than you. In 5? Is that what you said?
That's what I think. I mean, I don't worry about those teams. I know the Kings looked good the other night, but I don't know. I just don't worry about the Kings really. I
worry about the Suns more than the Kings and the Mavericks. And
yeah,
I respect all 3 of those teams have crazy superstars and high-end talent, and I respect that. But I think it's a 5 or 6 game series and a win for the Wolves. I think they lose in the second round. Right now, I think since this is very therapeutic. We're talking through the worst case scenarios right now. I think they lose like a 6 or a 7 game really hard fought series in the second round, and specifically, I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to have a couple classic cat games in that series. Call me a hater. Jake Painting, Howls and Growls, YouTube. Did you watch that 15-minute video he put out 2 days ago?
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it's not disrespectful. It's not hating. He's saying throughout the entire video, I hope that they fix some of these things. I hope that I'm wrong. But he's showing you video evidence of Karl leaning into the things that he's the worst at time and time again and avoiding the things that he's the best at. And he's ninth year in the league. So until he proves me and Howls and Growls and others wrong on that stage against the Clippers or whoever they wind up playing in the second round, I remain skeptical. But if that happens, dude, if they win the first round playoff series and they take somebody 6-7 games in the second round, and it's the start of something, right? With Anthony Edwards being 22 years old, I'm good with that. This is not a one. Now, on the flip side, the Western Conference doesn't have, I mean, the Nuggets are the best team, but the Western Conference, you're sitting at the top of it right now. Like, you are the best team in the regular season. You've got the best defensive player on the planet. You have a chance to win the championship and get to the Western Conference Finals or get to the NBA Finals if you fall a step short. So I'm trying to balance what I think is probably going to happen with also this huge opportunity that they do have if they keep the car on the between the white lines. So I don't know. Am I being too much of a cat hater when I say that? You're the pro cat guy on the show, and I'm the cat hater. So
no, and we should say it with all the babies welcoming into this world. I'm so happy for everyone that Jake Painting is also having a kid. So shout out to Jake and Howell.
Shout out.
The NBA. Maybe I'll come pivot back to you because you're the football guy. The NBA more than any other sport, in my opinion, just based on how fans react and how online some of them can be. There are 8 teams that are going to make the Eastern Conference and Western Conference playoffs. And then, like any good bracket, it'll cut down in half. And each team that gets eliminated in the first round is going to have an existential crisis. Like, they're all going to have complete meltdowns, right? So it doesn't matter who the 4 teams that advance, the 4 that don't are going to freak out. So back to the Karl stuff. I mean, it's kind of why I'm not super concerned about losing 4-point game to the Kings when all it took was 1 or 2 different sets to maybe get a good look. The Clippers game was just, there was a couple of mistakes in there, all parties involved. I think the late game stuff, this is a good transition into the late game stuff, not just Karl, but even against the Blazers last night, which was a game that you can take nothing away from. Like, they showed up, they did the bare minimum. It was like a root canal, and they got it taken care of when they left.
Both teams did what they had to do, by the way. The Blazers came, they played, they got some cardio, and they lost, and they improved their lottery chances.
And Ant got some cardio. We can maybe talk about that. But no, I am concerned with how Finch or anyone, like they do close most games with the same guys that they started the party with. And when you close that way, and Rudy Gobert is kind of like, I'm thinking just basic stuff like inbounding the basketball, like full quarter. Like, you give up a bucket, you get a stop, the ball goes out of bounds, you're trying to inbound it to get a guy to shoot free throws. they rely pretty heavy on Mike. Bill Simmons and Russillo talked about Mike Conley the other day, and like Bill Simmons was pretty like kind of anti Mike Conley or the extension and stuff, just saying how old he is. I don't think he watches Timberwolves games, but
He doesn't.
I mean, like the dependence on Mike, or then it's like, and you know, this is the conversation, Phil, about no one wants to hear that this team is young, even though like 4 of their 8 rotation players are all under 25. But then they start 2 guys in their 30s. Mike Conley's 38. So I'm with you. Like, we don't have to say they're young. I think immature is slightly aggressive, because the way I think about immature would be more like the teams like a Wizards, like teams that just literally don't take the game seriously. Everyone in the league doesn't take a game seriously, but those teams do it more often. Inexperienced would be the most appropriate way to describe this team, and they don't have a lot of experience winning outside of your point guard, who's 38, and your center, who, other than playing all-world defense, like what do you expect Rudy to do in late-game situations, right? Other than get stops.
Your offensive experience closing games
is as low as it gets in the league.
So Conley's been in the league for 17 years, Gobert for 11, Kyle Anderson for 10, Monte Morris for 7, Cat for 9. So you can't say that they're young.
No,
you can say they have some young pieces. And then to your point, the 4 guys that are 23 and under, 24 and under, Ant, Jaden, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That's your main rotation. But the highest usage players in crunch time, one of them's 22, Anthony Edwards, and still trying to figure the whole matrix out. The other one is a 9-year veteran in Karl-Anthony Towns, who has, this is to his detriment, has yet to fully figure out how to solve the puzzle on a regular basis late in games. That's fair to say.
And again, I'm way more pro Karl than I think others. And like, that's just also true, though. He doesn't have a lot of big game reps. And what Jake was trying to highlight is that I always think, I love the term in basketball when you speed someone up, because like I can relate to that. Just, I know people are going to roll their eyes, but like even when you just like play pickup basketball, but like if someone picks you up full court, it speeds up how fast I have to dribble, how fast I have to move, how fast I have to think. And when you speed up the Timberwolves, and that's what happens in late game situations because there's chaos, you resort to bad habits because you don't have enough reps with good habits.
So I'm going to give you 4 crazy stats from Howls and Growls. This is it's just part of a YouTube breakdown. Go check it out. He's killing it on YouTube. Basically, here's the summary. When you give the ball to Karl and you ask him to process and think and solve post-ups and dribble drives, he struggles big time, and I'll come back to some stats. When you put him in a position to react and finish, he's one of the best in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with the good. When he's the pick and roll man, he averages, so he sets a pick, and now he's rolling and he's reacting, right? 1.42 points per possession, which is second best in the league among players with at least 100-plus possessions in those situations. And he has the 11th best turnover rate, meaning lowest turnover rate, as the pick and roll man. So turnovers down, scoring up when he's the pick and roll man. Catch and shoot threes, 43.5% on pretty high volume, right? Like 5 threes a game. Mm-hmm. 1.18 points per possession coming off screens on catch and shoot threes, which is 77th percentile league-wide. I mean, we see it. Catch and shoot, dude's an all-time sniper, right? Yep. So pick and roll man, catch and shoot threes. Hey, finish this, boom, with a 3. Finish this, boom, with maybe, a bounce pass in the lane and a hammer dunk, whatever, right? On the flip side, on post-ups, Cat has a turnover rate of 11. So 11% of post-ups for him turn into turnovers, which is the second worst rate among high-usage post players. His 4.7% assist rate in post-ups, meaning, okay, here's the double or whatever, find somebody who's open. 5th worst assist rate among high-usage post players. And then one more, on drives, and we see this all the time, right? He has the worst turnover rate on drives among high-usage players in the NBA. 11% of his drives, so 1 in every 9, is a turnover, either an offensive foul or a turnover. And he has the 5th worst assist rate on drives. And oftentimes, like when he starts driving or when he posts up, they will run a second defender at him or somebody will come over and help. And the play is there to be made. But for whatever reason, 9 years in the league, he's not processing it in a way that leads to an open bucket for somebody else or just, better rotation of passes. He's turning it over and he's not finishing the assist. So if you can put him in a spot to shoot more threes and be the pick and roll man, you're going to reduce the turnovers and you're going to score more points. But if you're constantly posting him up, or if he's just taking it upon himself to drive, it's a disaster more often than most players. So
make Karl-Anthony Towns your wide receiver and don't have him play quarterback.
Agreed.
Right? But
fire Finch. Is that what you're saying?
Well, okay, I'm gonna actually give it a little teaser on that. But again, if you want Carl to be more Justin Jefferson than Kirk Cousins or I guess Sam Darnold for next season, the coaching staff kind of has to be a part of that, but also too, the rest of the guys that are in that rotation, again, like Rudy can't play quarterback. Like that's just not gonna happen. They don't seem interested in giving Jaden the ball more in those situations, maybe because he can't handle it, or maybe that's just not, he's always going to be the fifth option. So then it's like you have two guys, you have the bridge quarterback and Mike Conley. Like, how much late game execution in playoff series can you run with him without running him into the ground? Or this young quarterback, that's still technically on a rookie deal, like how much can you empower him? I thought, and this is just a quick snippet, but we had, and we're going to talk about this with Jim on Thursday because he coached, and I'm curious about this because when they lose and the late game stuff sucks, it's fire Finch. And last Thursday when we talked about the Jane McDaniels conversation, to which I was just like, hey, give him the ball a little bit more, trust him a little bit more, and then I don't know, spoiler alert, 24 hours later he had a career high against the Kings. Point me, but Jim was pretty open and said some things that I kind of opened my mind. And then the comment section was like, he played, you didn't. I'm going to trust that guy. Jim's way smarter than you. Like, yeah, no shit. But Jim also has said for 3 weeks, and Britt Robson has said for 6 months, that Chris Finch is the smartest coach this team has ever had. So every football field in America has their goalposts in the same position. And all I'm asking you is to keep those goalposts in the same position. Because when Jim's right on Jaden, because he's played and he's there, then Jim's also probably right on Finch. And back to the Ant thing, when Finch is like, I want you to take a quick 2 against the Clippers, and Ant's like, well, I want a 3, and then Carl's like, well, I may want 3, and they burned all that clock, and then Ant took a quick 2. There is a chance, ladies and gentlemen, that the coaching staff is actually trying to get this young, immature, inexperienced, whatever team to do stuff, and they're not doing it. That could be a reality. Mm-hmm. So just, I don't know, man. Open your mind a little bit to some of that stuff. I don't think Finch does a lot. I think that end of game thing against the Kings was embarrassing. You're in a tie game. You had Jane McDaniels guarded by Kevin Herter. Like, find a way to get a back cut and get a guy going to the rim. You only need 1 point to win. That is on the coaching staff. But also if the coaching staff's like, hey, we tried to run a weird ATO and they just broke it down and Carl took a shot, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
No, this is all. I mean, I think this is therapeutic, and we do have to wrap this podcast here in a couple minutes. So we will probably leave it there and then talk to Jim on Thursday. But maybe just to because this all started with text from Kyle's dad, Jeff, which I think should be a regular weekly segment here. And by the way, if Kyle stops responding to your text, Jeff, you text him to me and I'll read them on the show. Okay. But yeah, it's not, at the end of the day, like, this is a really good team. They've only lost back-to-back games 3 times. They need to fix some of the late-game offensive stuff, and the playoffs are going to be a blast. Presented by our friends at First Equity, by the way, this breakdown of Wolves X's and O's. It's about the deepest we dive into statistics and X's and O's on the show. So First Equity is 24 years in the market and recognized, by the way, 15 straight years as one of the top 1% of loan originators in the country. You know you're getting a great experience at First Equity Mortgage. I got my home refinanced about 7 or 8 years ago through First Equity. I've had 20 other coworkers and friends in my life that have worked with First Equity to get a home loan. So check them out at femort.com. That's femort.com or scorenorth.com. Keyword David. You're also helping the show when you support our partners. Any final words from you here, my friend?
Last night was the final night I had to watch a non-League Pass Timberwolves game because the Wolves played the Blazers. I'm in the Portland market, so I had to watch the Blazers call. And again, whether it be name pronunciations or learning the game or anything. I know someone last week in the comments was like, I like when you have Jim on, but you kiss his ass. Sometimes I just like to compliment people that do a really good job. And I was reminded last night watching a game where the Blazers broadcast is okay, but we're very lucky that Michael Grady and Jim Peterson call these games, and Alan Horton, because it's a tough hang to listen to other teams other broadcasts try to talk about your team, and that's kind of why I'm soured on the national thing. I don't want the national media attention. I don't care if the NBA Twitter account writes essays about the Thunder, and then when the Wolves regain first place, they're just like, whatever, that's fine. I like my little market. I like my small market. I like the people that cover it, because bigger stages and people from the outside, not very good.
Yeah, I think the out of market broadcasters, even some of the national ones, have such a hard time with the hyphenated last names on this team. They don't know if they should like glue it to the first name or the last name, or if they should just take the very last. Like, is it Walker? Is it Alexander Walker? Is it Anthony Towns? Is it
Jalen McDaniels? Like, you don't have a 52-man roster to memorize. It's like 8 guys that play basketball.
So, hey, thank you guys for helping us continue to grow Flagrant Howls. This is a blast doing this podcast during the most successful season in 20 years of Wolves basketball. And we'll bring Jim Pete back in the mix for a Thursday episode. Please continue to give us those 5-star ratings and a positive review on Apple and Spotify. And click that like button and the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel. By the way, we just launched our 3rd Score North YouTube channel. The Score North Twin Show now has its own YouTube channel. And starting next week, all of the episodes of the Score North Twin Show are going to be available exclusively on the other YouTube channel, the Score North Twin Show. So if you're a Twins fan, you're excited at spring training, you can find the link to the Score North Twin Show YouTube channel on either the Score North YouTube channel on the homepage, you'll see it, or on the Purple Daily channel, or you can just type it into the search bar, and you can find all those episodes. And you can still find those on the audio feeds too, Apple and Spotify. But we're branching out with a 3rd YouTube channel. Someday Flagrant Howls will also have its own YouTube channel, but we're just going to kind of leave things in place until maybe the season's over so we don't confuse people, Kyle.
I'm excited. More Twins coverage, the better. I like the separate channels. I like the way we've done that. And I also like, too, again, if you didn't listen to yesterday's episode of Flagrant Howls with Phil and Judd and Declan, I like the perspective, because I think sometimes Judd sees it differently than I do. So you might not always agree with any of the content you consume, but people are working hard and trying to entertain you. So catch that if you haven't.
Yeah, but we can all agree. We just want the Timberwolves to win a first-round playoff series and see what happens.
Before my dad dies, yeah.
All right, that's a wrap. Kyle, Phil, for awesome producer Ross. We'll see you guys next time. This is a Timberwolves Lifestyle Podcast.